inside and take your seat so that we can start the World Leaders session. Once again, please come inside the hall and take your seat so that we can start the World Leaders session. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from the short break. We'll now commence the World Leaders session. During the World Leaders session, we'll be able to elaborate the ideas presented during the opening ceremony. We have prominent discussant as well as very knowledgeable moderator with us. And it is my great privilege to introduce the moderator as well as the discussant. When your names are being called, please come up to the stage. First of all, let me briefly introduce our moderator. After receiving PhD degree from Oxford University, he was appointed as a presidential press and political secretary, and soon he served numerous times as the member of Korean National Assembly. During his term, he also was either a member or chairman of one of the most or few of the most important committees within the National Assembly, such as diplomacy, foreign affairs, trade, and economy. It is our great honor to have Dr. Park Jin with us as a moderator. Please welcome Executive President Park Jin of Asia Future Institute, former Chairman of Foreign Affairs Unification Committee of National Assembly of Korea. First discussant is former Prime Minister Han Sung-soo of Republic of Korea, currently serving as UN Secretary General Special Envoy. Please come up to the stage, and ladies and gentlemen, please welcome former Prime Minister Han Sung-soo. Next, former Prime Minister Julia Gillard, who flew all the way from Australia. Please welcome her once again with a warm round of applause. Last but not least, former Foreign Minister Lee Zhao-xing, currently serving as President of Chinese Public Diplomacy Association. Thank you, and now I will hand over the microphone to Dr. Park Jin. Thank you.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the World Leaders session on discussing how to design New Asia. I had a thought about the title of the conference, Designing New Asia, in my room yesterday, and I found the initial DNA. And we are here to discuss the DNA. What kind of DNAs do we need to introduce mutual trust, cooperation, reconciliation, and most importantly, the spirit of community, the sharing of the spirit of community. We had three excellent speeches this morning by prominent world leaders, former Prime Minister of Australia and formerly leader of the Labour Party, Honorable Julia Gillard, and also former foreign minister of China, and currently president of Chinese Public Diplomacy Association, Minister Lee Zhao-xing. And we have another distinguished world leader who represents Korea, former Prime Minister Han Sung-soo, and former president of the UN General Assembly, and currently UN Secretary General's Special Envoy on disaster risk reduction and water. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome these distinguished panel members with a big round of applause. Thank you. Let me first start with Prime Minister Julia Gillard. Lady first, if you don't mind. Your speech was really impressive. It was really overarching speech covering the international diplomatic structure and the strategic transformation occurring in the whole of Asia. I would like to ask you three quick questions. One, are you optimistic about the future of Asia Pacific? What kind of Asia and Pacific we will envision in, say, 2 to 3 decades from now on? And secondly, you mentioned Korea-Japan relationship, the thorny issues and uncomfortable partnership between the two sides. You mentioned that honesty about the past is very important, but we live in the present. From our viewpoint in Korea, past is a mirror for the future, and we can learn lessons from the past for the future. So what is your advice for, say, Korea-Japan relationship in terms of how to resolve this important history issue and move forward to the future? Finally, in your future vision of Asia-Pacific, when and how do you think Korea will be unified, and what role can Australia play to make it happen? Briefly.
Well, thank you for those questions, though I think you've set me a fairly hard list to answer. To try and go through them, I am an optimist about the future of our region. There will be, I think, moments of difficulty and tension, but I am an optimist. I think that we've got the will, and we are developing the structures that can navigate us through those tensions. If I imagine this region in 10, 20, 30 years, what I would hope to imagine is one where it's not only a matrix of free trade agreements, but it's really a region of genuine economic integration, that we've got very good flows of trade and capital, and behind the border barriers have been worked through and largely eradicated. I think that that will spell more prosperity for all. I would see it as a region with even greater people-to-people links. I think the young people who are coming behind us in my own country, in Korea, in other parts of the region, will be truly global citizens, and they will be at home here, holidaying in this beautiful place. They will be at home in central Sydney. They will be at home in downtown Tokyo. They will be at home in Shanghai and right across the region. And I think that that will give us more of a collective sense of the region. In terms of the issues that have given rise to tension between Korea and Japan, I wish that I was the custodian of the magic formula that could resolve this. I am not. But I do know for our own nation that following World War II, it took some acts of political courage and leadership for Australia to seek to forge a different relationship with Japan. And we have reached a state where our history is remembered and accurately recorded, including the suffering of prisoners of war held by the Japanese. Indeed, one of our recent most best-selling novels by a man called Richard Flanagan is a work of fiction, but a work of fiction which draws deeply on the history of that time. So the history is known, it is discussed, it is acknowledged, the victims of that history are cared for, but it has not got in the way of a comprehensive partnership with Japan in the modern age. And so I would hope for my friends in Korea and Japan that you can get to that place too, and it will take not only acts by political leaders, but acts by the people of Japan and Korea to find that point of exchange and engagement which enables the history to be acknowledged and recognised, but for it not to be a barrier to creating the future. So they're I think the
Korean Peninsula.
The Korean Peninsula, of course, the last of the 4 questions. I don't know. Wouldn't we all like to know? But leading from some of the contributions this morning, particularly the discussion of the changes in the Arab world, one thing that I think we've learned from the early years of this century is change can come quickly and in a very unpredictable way. So the time might be many years ahead. It might actually happen quite quickly, and we need to be prepared for either contingency.
Thank you very much. Let me ask my next question to Foreign Minister Lee Jae-sing. As many of us will agree, China is certainly on the rise and expanding power and influence in the region. You mentioned in your speech the Chinese dream, 中国梦, to build a strong and prosperous country, and suggested that Chinese dream can turn into an Asian dream. You also mentioned that China welcomes constructive roles by non-Asian countries, but at the same time reject military blocs and military alliances in Asia. I think you're referring to the United States under Obama administration, which is trying to rebalance its strategic posture with a pivot to Asia policy and strengthening its alliances with Korea and Japan, for example. My question is, Minister Li Jiaoxing, what is your view on the rebalancing strategy of the United States in Asia, and how do you accommodate the U.S. policy with the new model of great power relationship which was proposed by President Xi Jinping?
感谢主席先生给我一个说话的机会。我真的特别高兴来参加这次论坛，以便能够向朋友们说一些过去没地方说的心里的话。刚才主席先生赞扬中国崛起，我个人更愿意说，中国的进步和100多年前、200多年前一些西方国家的所谓崛起是根本不一样的。他们呢才叫崛起，譬如说，先是葡萄牙崛起，后来葡萄牙顶不住西班牙的压力，西班牙又崛起，然后英国也崛起。他们这种崛起经常是牺牲其他国家的利益，比如说葡萄牙的殖民主义者就曾经占领过中国的澳门，过了好几百年，在1999年，新中国才收回了自己的澳门。他们就是这样崛起的。英国在1842年通过鸦片战争占据了我们的香港，它倒崛起了。到1997年，新中国才收回了我们丢了150多年的香港。后来日本崛起了，1895年，他们占据了我们台湾省，占据了我们的澎湖列岛、南沙群岛和钓鱼岛群岛。他们就是这样崛起的。然后，当然，韩国朋友更清楚，1910年，他们又把韩半岛变成了日本的殖民地。他们的崛起，日本的崛起就是靠着这种办法，对别的国家进行殖民剥削、压迫和掠夺。刚才吉拉德女士阁下也提到，二战期间，日本侵略者也欺负过澳大利亚朋友。我去达尔文的时候知道，二战期间，日本的侵略军还野蛮地轰炸过我们的澳大利亚的那么一个漂亮的港口达尔文港。这种办法一般的叫崛起。我们中国现在是在和平发展，是靠了中国老百姓一滴汗一滴汗的劳动，靠了我们知识分子的一些知识、智慧，才慢慢的、逐渐的发展起来。我们的发展没有侵犯过任何邻近国和其他国家的利益，更没有侵占过任何国家的1寸土地。爱好和平是中国人民最好的一个传统。 所以我个人说，希望朋友们能够理解我们的进步，我们的发展是和平的，是对别的国家也有利的，和西方过100多年以前的崛起本质上是不同的。所以我们是和平发展，这是我要特别强调的一点。至于还要提到美国重返亚洲，我个人也有自己的想法。我在美国生活过6年，在美国朋友特别多，我好几个老师，包括我的英文老师，都是非常优秀的、善良的美国人。我热爱伟大的美国人民。但是说起美国重返亚太，我得有一个问题：2战之后，美国什么时候离开过亚太？美国什么时候离开过？比如说韩国，比如说日本，没有啊。什么时候叫重返亚太了？后来又说再平衡，好像还马马虎虎的，像回事儿似的。总而言之，就这个问题，我的回答是：中国方面会坚定的按照联合国宪章的基本规定的原则来发展同美国的友好合作关系。这个规定的很清楚，联合国宪章就是各个国家一律平等，相互尊重，不干涉内政。宪章规定，连宪章的第1章第7条规定，连联合国都没有权利干涉本质上属于一个成员国内部事务的事情。那更不用说一个普通的联合国成员会有权利有资格去干涉另外一个成员国的内政。这是一。第二，我们坚持按照和平共处5项原则来做事，坚持睦邻友好，坚持和永远和其他的国家进行平等互利、合作共赢的那种关系。所以我们和美国会根据中美之间3个联合公报的精神来发展关系，但是在实际自己核心利益的问题上，我们也会公开表明自己的立场。譬如说，世界上只有一个中国，台湾是中国的，所以每当美国向我们中国的一部分台湾省出口武器，我们就坚决反对，中国老百姓不答应。每当美国最高领导人会见一个搞分裂活动、搞独立的一个和尚，我们也会坚决抗议。另外，我也希望国际上都应该大家说公道话，说符合事实的话。我就看到我的巴勒斯坦朋友，我就想到，大家真是应该坚持联合国宪章。前几年，当巴勒斯坦申请成为联合国一个成员国的时候，有的大国反对，我觉得很奇怪。大国应该带头支持人家，不支持，说这个世界上不太公道。还有的说南中国海问题，有的国家根本不承认联合国海洋法，也不在上面签字，但是还拿海洋法来说事儿，这也是非常奇怪的现象。总而言之，我们这个世界在进步，在前进，但是存在着好多不合理、不民主，还挺奇怪的事儿。我希望我们的论坛也能够为世界变得越来越民主一点，越来越合理一点，做出贡献。我再次祝我们的济州论坛成功，谢谢。
Minister Li Jiaxing, I have a follow-up question for you. In your speech, you mentioned that China stands firm about territorial sovereignty. But given your conflict with Japan in the East China Sea, and also China's conflict with countries like Vietnam and the Philippines in the South China Sea. How can China assure peaceful solution to this problem? And how can you persuade the concerned Asian neighbors that you are taking legitimate actions? Very briefly.
比如说，南沙群岛一共有51个岛礁。一个岛一般的是指在涨潮时候露出水面的面积达到或者超过500平方米，这叫岛；小于的500平方米的叫礁。在南沙群岛51个岛礁。 根据国际法的原则和国际惯例，是中国先发现、先命名、先进行主权管辖，所以是中国的。但是我们完全清楚，在这个问题上，我们同一些邻国，包括您刚才所提到的越南和菲律宾存在分歧。那我们又根据联合国宪章的规定，我们主张。 通过和平谈判来解决分歧。比如说，我们同越南有分歧，我们愿意同越南进行友好谈判。我们毕竟是多少年了都是友好邻邦。菲律宾一样，菲律宾和中国都是发展中国家，都曾经遭受过日本军国主义的侵略。说起来，美国朋友为了支援菲律宾抗击日本侵略者，还曾经牺牲了大约7000人在菲律宾。所以菲律宾人民在这方面也是感谢美国的。但是在领土问题上，像黄岩礁是中国的，这没问题。我们和菲律宾又发生分歧，我们也愿意和菲律宾这样一个老朋友、抗疫战争时期的老伙伴进行和平对话，来解决问题。我们和有关的国家，特别是东盟国家，还都达成了南海行为共同宣言。中国一贯遵守这些宣言所确定的原则。现在要提防的是域外大国插手南海问题。刚才我提到，有的国家根本不参加，不在海洋法公约签字，还拿海洋法说事儿；有的国家离南海那么老远，还过来干预有关国家的事务，有关国家的双边外交活动，这是很不应该的。这些国家的领导，我觉着没有看过联合国宪章，或者看过了故意的违反宪章精神。所以，我们将继续和有关国家通过和平手段来解决问题，保证南中国海的国际上的航行自由，包括南中国海的各国在那儿的和平利用等等。去年一年有10万艘船经过南中国海航行，是完全自由的。我们想这就是个好事儿。有的国家拿航行自由为借口来想干预，也是没有根据的，没有道理的。总而言之，南中国海的有关国家、亚太地区的国家，我们可以和平相处，可以通过和平的外交活动来解决好问题，但是要防止第三者挑拨离间。今年是我在外交活动方面工作的第50周年，这50年我的体会是，做外交和做人差不多，要做一个好的外交官，就得像做一个好人一样。那么人和人之间难免有矛盾，甚至夫妻2个也会有矛盾，但是大家最反对的、最反感的是第三者 插足。所以我相信，我们亚洲国家的人民，通过各种形式，包括通过这样的好的论坛，可以增加相互了解、相互的信任，解决问题，共同维护好地区的和平和稳定，来给我们的发展繁荣创造条件。谢谢主席先生。
We can peacefully resolve these issues based on international law and common sense. But let me turn to Prime Minister Han Seung-soo. Asia is undergoing a major transformation with its enormous potential for future economic growth. For example, Korea, China, Japan take up more than 1/5 of the global economic power. 10 ASEAN countries are rapidly growing with the expansion of the middle class. India has now changed its leadership and is now reinvigorating its momentum for further growth. Asia, however, is also faced with problems and difficulties, as Prime Minister Julia Gillard has pointed out. Energy shortages and environmental pollutions, an aging society. In your view, Prime Minister Han, what lessons can Asia learn from Europe in resolving these issues and moving toward more cooperative and institutionalized community for peace and prosperity?
For a moment, I thought that this will be only panel where I will not be given chance to speak. But I am so happy to be back to Jeju Island once again. I, in my capacity as foreign minister, initiated this forum in 2001. It was called the Jeju Peace Forum. It's now named changed to Jeju Forum for Peace and Prosperity. There can be peace without prosperity, but no peace no prosperity without peace. Therefore, peace really is very important value. For a peaceful and prosperous Asia, I think as you just mentioned, I think the grand design for New Asia should be like European Union. That is shining example of Asia for reconciliation and long-term peace. But at this juncture, unfortunately, unlike a few years ago, the reconciliation a la European integration seems to be rather far away at the moment in Asia. What we should do really in this situation is to find an alternative approach to New Asia, a kind of building block approach to New Asia. There are many areas where we can have one Asia. For example, you just mentioned that Asia accounts about 30% of the global GDP, but Northeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, account for 21% of GDP in 2012, I think, and also accounted for almost 18% of the global trade. Therefore, it's not a small bloc. But at the same time, while we are growing so fast, we have produced a huge amount of carbon dioxide. China is the largest emitter of carbon dioxide, I think 8.7 billion metric tons 2 years ago. India the third, Japan the fifth, Korea is the eighth. So I think instead of going for a grand design for Asia, if we concentrate on some sectoral approach to designing New Asia, we will be able to have a very interesting sort of community of Asia in this part of, in this area of dealing with the climate change issues. Even in the case of European Union, as you may know, they haven't started the EEC from the beginning. What they have done was initial European community for European coal and steel community. They want to control the raw materials of coal and steel initially, and then from then on, moved on to Treaty of Rome, 1956. So in case of Asia, if we really want to design a grand sort of design for New Asia, we should not start too much a grand way, but start kind of building approach to the problems. This environmental issue one, but trade is another. For example, we have now over 100 FTA in Asia, of which more than 50% is intra-Asia FTA. And yet, by going for more liberal, sort of free trading relationship between nations in this part of the world, we will be able to have a really good, if not trading bloc, at least a free trading region in this area. This is one area. Trading, sort of a community for free trade is another one. Aging society is rapidly coming, and the urbanizing is another problem. And also energy is also a problem because we will be spending 3 times more than energy now in 2050. We have to rely heavily on the supply of energy resources from outside Asia. And that will be a great problem for not only Asia, but the world. So from now on, the Asian nations has to really work very hard, not only to make Asia a peaceful and prosperous region, but we have to be responsible for a peaceful and prosperous world to come by joining our forces to make these things happen.
Prime Minister, you mentioned FTA, the multi-directional FTAs in the Asia-Pacific region. Korea, China, and Australia are all participating in the East Asian Free Trade Negotiation Network, which is called RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, together with Japan, 10 ASEAN countries, India, and New Zealand. At the same time, we have the TPP process, so-called Trans-Pacific Partnership, including US and Japan, Australia, North and South America, and several ASEAN countries and New Zealand. TPP has been trying to create new multilateral free trade rules for the Asia-Pacific region as well. Now, in the meantime, Korea and China have been negotiating a separate bilateral FTA to promote our growing trade and investment between the two sides. Prime Minister Han, from your perspective, what will be the end results of these two countervailing free trade, multinational free trade networks eventually, and what should be Korea's best strategy and role playing in this development?
Well, the best solution for the world is the successful multilateral negotiation through World Trade Organization. And because these negotiations have not been going too well, that there has been proliferation of free trade agreement between nations. So free trade agreement is second best, not the best. So we have to really work very hard to have a successful multilateral negotiation through WTO. New Director General is trying very hard, but I think it will take some time. On the situation, RCEP or TPP, these are the sort of alternative to multilateral trade negotiations. But in the meantime, we have a free trade agreement with the EU, free trade agreement with the United States. Now we are negotiating China on free trade agreement. It is better to have 3 or 4 countries joining to form a free trade agreement than bilateral. So best would be the multilateral. Second best would be regional trading. And third, perhaps better than nothing, would be bilateral. Unfortunately, bilateral trade agreement has been sort of fashionable in the world until now. So in that respect, I think TPP as well as RCEP are very, very useful form of making world trade freer. But my best option would be to see the multilateral trade negotiation through WTO success. And we have to really work very hard to make that happen. At this juncture, many governments are interested in only bilateral or regional trade arrangement, but I think that is only second option to the best solution.
Thank you. Prime Minister Julia Gillard, sorry to keep you waiting some time. One of the most important agenda for the future development of the Asia Pacific is environment. Australia, country with a Great Barrier Reef and beautiful national parks and Tasmanian wilderness. You are in a leading position and you are at the forefront of environmental protection and to reduce carbon emission through emission control and also research on renewable energy. Australia is also abundant with natural resources, coals and minerals, and major exporter of energy resources to many countries in the region, including Korea and China. What do you think will be the future role of Australia in the promotion of the clean environment and also promoting energy security in the Asia-Pacific region?
Thank you for that question. I think we'll have to get you to shoot a commercial for being a tourist visitor to Australia, so thank you for that too. You raise an incredibly vital issue for all of us, just as we have pointed to peace as absolutely a foundation stone, and environment that is sustainable is a foundation stone for all of humanity as well. And currently, if you look at global efforts, we are not doing enough to address the challenge of climate change. For Australia, number one, we need to make sure our own domestic house is in order. One of the things that I did as Prime Minister in a very vexed debate was make sure that we created an emissions trading scheme, that we put a price on carbon, so that there would be a pressure in our economy to move to cleaner energy sources. And one of the features of our contemporary domestic political debate is whether or not that price on carbon will be retained. Looking more broadly across the region, one thing that I think I can point to as a success at APEC in Vladivostok, there was a negotiation amongst APEC countries to reduce tariffs on environmental goods, more than 50 of them. And I think that that was a good step forward and a show that if you really try, you can make a difference in multilateral negotiations to environmental goods and services that will make a difference for our planet. And our Trade Minister, Dr. Craig Emerson, was very pivotal to that. We will continue to be an energy superpower. We certainly are one of the biggest energy exporters on the planet. I think over time, the energy sources that we export will transition from coal more into gas. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have a long-term future exporting coal. We will be. But already you can see that we are a large exporter of gas, which is a cleaner energy source, and which I think the world will use as a transition fuel as we move to truly renewable energy sources. And it's my hope that Australia can continue to be an energy superpower in the age in which people look to renewable sources first. We are a vast country of sunshine, of wind, of tidal power, of geothermal power, and I think we can take some Australian ingenuity into these energy sources and have that as one of our comparative advantages for the rest of time when the world is much more reliant on clean and renewable energy.
Great. Yes, Prime Minister Han. Microphone, please.
Yeah. Climate change is a very important and crucial issue facing the humanity. And since the termination of Kyoto Protocol 2012, we have no international agreement in force. And a few months ago, there was a publication of fifth assessment report of the IPCC, and only a few weeks ago, the United States published National Climate Assessment. And as you may know, Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, has called for a summit meeting on climate change on September 23rd of this year on the margin of the General Assembly of the United Nations General Assembly. So all in all, I think although we do not have any multilateral governance system in working now, world leaders are very aware of the issue, including, I think, Chinese leadership, that this is the issue that we have to solve. But at this juncture, unfortunately, we do not have multilateral governance system to deal with this problem. So September summit meeting is very crucial, and also COP20 to be held in Lima, in Peru, towards the end of November and early December will be also very crucial. But the most crucial will be next year's COP21 in Paris. So we have only a year and a half left to design a really good multilateral governance system to deal with the impact of the climate change. We really have to work very hard to do that.
Prime Minister Han, you also work hard for the Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation and the UN Secretary General's Advisory Board. Could you tell us more about your activity on the water management and the quality of the water that we consume?
Water is life, but water can be a threat to life too. So I am now a member of the UN Secretary General's Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation, but I am also founding chair of the high-level expert leaders panel on water and disaster, and also Secretary General's Special Envoy on Water and Disaster Risk Reduction. So I have been heavily involved in the water and disaster issue for the last, I think, 7-8 years. What we are trying to do is the water has been what Kim Yong, the president of World Bank, a few weeks ago said that there will be a war because of water in 10 years' time. Lack of water, drought is also another problem. So on this issue, we are trying very hard to include water as the main component of the Sustainable Development Goal post-2015. During the MDG period, water has not been very prominent items. But from now on, we hope that water will play a very important role for the next 10 years. As you may know, there are billions of people who are not accessible to clean waters. Therefore, our board, as well as our panel, have been very much trying very hard to press upon the United Nations to include water as the main critical issue facing the humanity in the next the SDG deliberations.
Yeah. I guess water is also a very serious issue for the Asian region,
Yes.
where you have very scarce sources of water for the
Actually,
population.
water, China is has a problem with water. Wastewater management, also lack of water. So I think China also trying very hard to solve these problems.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just China, but water disaster, typhoons and storms create a lot of problems for Filipinos and then Vietnamese, southern part of China, even Korea. Jeju Island from oftentimes have about 3-4 times typhoon. So we have a lot of disaster impact on it. But we found out that politicians are not interested in prevention. They are interested in spending money after the disaster struck, because that is how their activities can be seen. But we think that monitoring, prevention of disaster is really the policy that government has to pursue. Yes. Unfortunately, many governments do not spend too much money on monitoring and prevention of the disaster.
So we need preventive politics as we need preventive diplomacy.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Foreign Minister Li Jiaoxing, President Xi Jinping is scheduled to visit Seoul next month, I understand. For the first time in his new leadership position in China, he's visiting Korea and meet with President Park Geun-hye to discuss ways of cooperation between the two countries and also regional and global affairs. What do you expect the Korea-China summit to achieve this time, especially in terms of solving the North Korean nuclear problem? You said in your speech that China stands firm in the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And also, what role do you think China can play to facilitate the peaceful unification of the Korean Peninsula?
谢谢主席先生。我首先要再次祝贺贵国总统、天津会总统阁下对中国成功的友好国事访问。我当然只是在电视上看访问的情况，我们中国老百姓特高兴。我个人还有特别高兴的地方，就是你们总统对中国古典文学甚至古典乐的把握，使我感到极为钦佩，值得我也好好学习。我是孔仲明先生走了，我是来自孔子家乡的，但里有好多古汉字我也不认识，但是你们的总统会，我真是要好好向他学习。那么现在我们的习近平主席阁下要对贵国进行国事访问，我也特别高兴。现在我们两国的关系，我认为处在最好时期。我本人感到幸福的是，我曾经作为一个初级外交官，在旁边参与过我们两国在1992年的建交谈判。我一到韩国，特别是想到8月，就会想到2个日子。第一是8月15号，大韩民国建立，我现在提前向你们祝贺国庆。第二是8月24号，我们两国的建交日，也值得我们祝贺。我们建交时间不长，也就20多年，但是发展很快。现在我也可以告诉我，澳大利亚的我尊敬的阁下、总理阁下，中韩两国可是有好多亚洲冠军、世界冠军。比如说，我们两国互为最大贸易伙伴。中国是韩国最大的贸易出口目的地国，中国还是韩国最大的进口来源国。中国呢，游客在韩国又是各国游客当中最多的，光济州岛，我们的总领事张女士阁下告诉我，去年光到济州岛来旅游的中国人就是180万。我们两国还有一项世界纪录，就是我们两国之间每天有110多班飞机航班。我现在不知道世界有哪2个国家每天有100多个航班，110多。另外，现在中国在韩国的留学生多达65000，韩国在中国的留学生62000人，是韩国在国外留学的国家，在中国还是最多的。还有好多世界冠军，我们两国，所以我们两国的友谊也是源远流长。所以我相信，通过我们两国最高领导人、国家元首的互访，我们这种友好和关系、互利共赢的合作关系，会走向一个新的台阶，给两国人民带来更大的好处。至于朝鲜半岛问题，中国的立场确实是非常明确的，一切都是为了和平，为了半岛的和平、地区的和平，还有世界的和平。为此，我们希望有关各方都要克制，比如说，不要采取那种极端的、吓人的军事性的行动来刺激对方，而要增加相互了解、相互信任，逐渐地创造条件，重新回到6方会谈的框架，来通过和平谈判，来争取实现半岛的无核化，实现半岛的和平稳定，乃至中国东北亚的和平。这是我们心里想的，也是愿意和有关各国共同努力追求的。谢谢。
Yes, Prime Minister Han.
One episode on our relationship with China.
Yeah.
before the normalization of our relationship between China, People's Republic of China and Korea, official contact started in 1983 when hijacked Chinese airplane landed in South Korea. At that time, Mr. Gong, I think descendant of Gong Kyushu, was our representative talking to your official. That airplane landed in my city, Chuncheon, our province.
对啊，感谢。那我也补充一个细节，就是我现在是离开外交部之后啊，也已离开了全国人大的外事工作之后，我现在是负责一点公共外交、民间外交或者所谓非政府外交的事情。现在我们两国在这方面也大有可为。中国现在各个城市、州、县、省和韩国的省、州、县、城有153对姊妹城，真的我们还像好的姊妹一样在相互往来。我们两国的企业合作也特别多。总而言之，我对我们两国的前景充满信心。我甚至可以大胆地说一句，因为中国人提倡谦虚，但是我下面这句话可能不够谦虚，但是我愿意说一下，希望中韩这种友好关系和互利合作也能够成为其他有关国家学习的样子。这样这个世界肯定会更美丽，就会像我们济州岛的芒草那么美丽。谢谢。
Okay. Foreign Minister Li Jiaoxin, you come from the province of Shandong, where Confucius used to live and teach, and I think you're in a very important position and playing a role for public diplomacy for the future peace and prosperity of the Asia-Pacific region. Now, I know time is almost up, but let me invite just 2 questions briefly from the floor. Please identify yourself and raise your hand, and please indicate the panelists that you want to address to, and make your question very brief and to the point. Just 2 quick questions from the floor.
Thank you for your help. That year, the incident.
Over there.
Oh, yes. Could you please give the microphone to the gentleman over there?
Hi, good afternoon to the panelists and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dang Huy Dong. I'm coming from Vietnam to attend the Globalization and Inequality Forum at this major forum. And I'm listening to the discussions on the panel with great interest. And I have this emotion that I joined the crowd at the opening ceremony to show our condolences to the victims of the Sewol capsized ferry, passenger ferry, where hundreds of children of South Korea were killed. And also, that takes me to, as mentioned in the speech by Ms. Julia Gillard, about the tragedy that took place on the MH370 from Malaysian Airlines.
Could you put your question very briefly?
Okay, I'm
please
coming.
Make your question, please.
I'm coming to the point of peace and tragedy, where hundreds of Chinese and other nationalities were killed. But none of us here mentioned about the unarmed, innocent fishermen in Vietnam that were killed on the eastern sea of Vietnam a few days ago, a week ago, and none of us talked about it. And those fishermen that were killed and drowned by armed forces, by vessels from the bigger nations, outnumbering our force, our guard coastal of our people, unarmed people, by number of ships and airplanes, and our people killed. The undefended people were killed, and numbers talking about it. And we are here talking about peace and prosperity. So my point is that we need to be realistic about and differentiate between words and actions. I've heard a lot about nice words from a very prominent diplomat, but then actions on the ground need to be paid attention to as well. So I need to draw the attention of the audience to that and the panelists to that. And I would like to have some comments on that from any of you. Thank you.
All right, one more question. May I invite the last question? Yes, please.
我是中国的宁波的一家网络公司，我又从事呢实体。现在呢，跟你韩中第一经济协会的李湘基会长李湘基韩中第一经济协会的李湘基会长，我们呢处的关系非常好。那李湘基先生，李先生到中国去，好，我呢就一个毛病就是打呼噜。但是李湘基先生呢，一到中国就跟我住在一起，工作在一起。那大家肯定会提问，我们什么工作在一起？你们韩国呢，韩中第一经济协会有个韩网，3w.kcrea.cc， 这个是中韩交流的一个平台，友好交流的平台。所以说我提问一下，就是说，在你跟你那个韩资企业，包括你韩国在驻中国的各个商会我们经常在一起。那么你们商会呢，所有的韩资企业呢，在中国有6万多家，他们的呼声就是说跟中国只要建立关系，我们别的什么也不要，我们只要跟中国建立关系，我们生意就能做上去。
Okay. All right. Thank you for the information. Would any of the panelists respond to a question from a Vietnamese gentleman? Perhaps Minister Lee, would you like to respond to the question from the gentleman? First question.
谢谢。
你韩国的韩中第一经济协会李湘基先生，李会长，韩国的，你韩国的产业通商资源部的韩中第一经济协会驻中国的一个协会，李湘基先生，不是我们的李部长。
Yes, thank you for the information.
好。
Mr. Lee.
不久之前，我刚刚访问了我们的邻国越南，我到了河内，也到了胡志明市。我的印象是，我们两国人民的友谊有着深厚的传统，两国的老百姓都愿意友好相处、和平相处。河南好多老年人告诉我，他们永远不会忘记1954年中国人民为了帮助越南人民抗击欧洲一个国家的殖民主义侵略，牺牲了好多人。也不会忘记1974年中国人民为了帮助越南人民赶走另外一个更大的超级大国的军队所做出的牺牲。说两国老百姓还是很友好的，我觉得这就是中越友谊的基础。国与国之交，关键在于民相亲。现在呢，我们为了南沙问题出现了一些分歧。我觉得很简单，首先大家都要尊重事实，包括历史事实和现在的事实。南沙群岛及其毗邻海域 都是中国的领土。这个应该承认这个最简单的事实。如果连最简单的事实也不承认或者假装看不见，那就不好了。就像钓鱼岛问题一样，本来是在很早之前，中国人先发现，中国人先主权管辖，名字也是中国皇帝给起的，当然是中国的了。第二条要注意的就是，两国要通过双边外交谈判来好好解决问题，还要遵守国际法，同时呢，要防止和这个域外大国来挑拨，这也很重要。发展的国家以前都曾经受过一些殖民主义国家的欺负，那么他们也有些现在还有些影响，他们搞挑拨离间还是有条件的，所以我们发展中国家，我们亚洲这个亚太地区的邻国要好好团结，团结就是我们自己共同努力，同时呢又要提防域外的国家来发挥这个不建设性的作用，甚至是挑拨离间。所以刚才我也提到，我们亚洲要团结，要设计新的亚洲。我们亚洲开放，欢迎域外地区参加，但是我们欢迎你来，是参加有利于和平稳定和发展的这个建设性作用。谢谢。
Well, I think we should wind up this session. I thank the panelists for the insightful and stimulating discussions on many issues of common concern. I also thank the audience for your attention and participation in this discussion. I hope that today's discussion can somehow help change the Asian paradox into Asian paradise. Thank you very much. The session is closed. Thank you.